Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. My name is Dan Bogner, and I look after our Asia-Pacific business at Salesforce. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. To start us off with, I actually have a question for you. How many people in the room are parents? Wow, the majority of people. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to take a moment and think back to that first moment that you held your newborn child in your arms. And I want you to try and remember what you thought about at that point in time. I would like you to think about all of the hopes, the dreams, and the aspirations that you had for your newborn child. I'll tell you what I thought about. When my son was placed into my hands, I thought about what his first words were going to be. Would he say mama or would he say dada? I thought about what his first day of school was going to be like. I thought about the man that he was going to grow into. I even thought about who he might marry one day. But think for a moment if life didn't turn out as you had imagined. What if your child didn't make eye contact with you? What if your child was non-verbal? What if your child was in the corner of the room tantruming for most of the day and you had no idea why? Well, unfortunately, if that is the case, chances are your child may be on the autism spectrum. And as a parent, it can be quite devastating, dealing with resetting the expectations that you have for your newborn child, but also some of the social stigmas that go along with that. Well, thankfully, the work that we've been doing together with Trobe University in Australia is about to change all of that. So let's take a moment and listen to their story.
People with autism have difficulties in social interactions and social relationships with other people. It makes the world a little bit difficult to negotiate. Early detection of autism is critical, and if we detect autism early, we can then begin to assist that young person to learn and to learn from other people. And that has knock-on effects on the quality of that person's life later on.
It's very difficult to come to terms that there might be something different about your child. When you're a parent and you are taking your concerns to a healthcare professional and they're saying you're overly anxious or to wait and see, they start to question their own parenting abilities. So we at OTARC are committed to developing an early detection tool that everybody around the world can use, and Salesforce is giving us that opportunity. Early intervention is so important because it really can change children's lives. So looking for behaviours such as smiling, such as pointing to a bird or a plane, and if they're missing, then this child might actually be developing autism. Over the last 10 years, we have conducted 2 large-scale developmental surveillance studies with an accuracy of 81%. This is the most accurate tool for early detection in the world.
The way we did this work was we trained hundreds of nurses to monitor young children when they came in for their routine checkups.
Once we implemented Salesforce and wrapped it around our early detection program, we were having those hundreds of nurses putting in the tens of thousands of records immediately, and us being able to help intake that child really quickly and that family really quickly. The natural progression for that was putting that into a mobile device and giving that power to parents.
So a parent will watch a series of videos looking at various social communication behaviours. They'll then answer a question such as, does your child point to a teddy?
So suddenly parents now have a powerful tool they can use on their phone, on their iPad, on their computer, which can guide them toward assessing their little child.
We needed a platform that meant if we're actually going in the hundreds of thousands or the millions of users really quickly, we needed something that was going to give us that ability. The way we did that was using Heroku. We used Salesforce to send emails to them to say, hey, you've got an at-risk status. What does it mean to have an at-risk status? What does autism actually mean? Unpacking those really big, maybe even scary words to properly communicate with the family, hey, you're on this new journey now and it's going to be okay.
It means all of the work that we've done is suddenly available globally. The speed and ease at which we've been working is beyond words. It's wonderful.
What makes me smile about all this is that this is the first of many projects. We're not stopping here. We keep going.
What an incredibly touching story. It's been a great experience to be a part of this, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome onto the stage from Trobe University, which is in Melbourne, Victoria, in Australia, two ladies that I've been working very closely with. Will you please join me in welcoming Professor Cheryl Dissanayake. Professor Cheryl is the director of the Olga Tennison Autism Research Centre. Hi Cheryl, great to see you at Dreamtalk. And also if we could welcome Dr. Josephine Barbaro. Josie is actually a research fellow at OTARC as well. Hi Josie.
Hi Dan.
Thanks for coming across to the United States and being part of Dreamforce. It's great to see you both here. Cheryl, maybe if I could start with you, if that's okay. I wanted to take us back to the video, and if you could just summarise for us what's really the challenge that you're trying to address through your research?
The challenge that we're trying to address is really to bring down the age of diagnosis of autism. Even though children currently show signs as early as 12 months, autism traditionally isn't diagnosed till at least 4 years of age. And this means that the child doesn't have access to early intervention that they need. Autism really is a spectrum of conditions. And if you're not getting identified and diagnosed early, it means you can't access that life-altering early intervention. And we also know that early identification and diagnosis reduces parental stress.
Right. And when we're talking about autism spectrum, Cheryl, can you give us a sense for how many people globally are impacted by autism? How many people are on the autism spectrum?
We now say between 1% to 2% of the population has autism. So the Center of Disease Control here in the US puts that at 1 in 68. Now, if you take all of the children worldwide who are under 4, that's about 638 million children. And if you apply the prevalence to those children, then you're talking about 120 million children worldwide will have an autism spectrum condition. Then if you think about their family and their friends, about 5 to 10 people surround each of us. And autism also impacts on families and friends. So really, when you take that globally, autism is impacting on a lot of people worldwide.
And I think that's probably one of the sort of the untapped secrets, which is really the impact that it has on the family and those closest to the person that's actually diagnosed as being on the spectrum.
Yes.
Cheryl, I want to come back to something you talked about in the video. You talked a lot about early diagnosis and early diagnosis as being so crucial to the child's development. Can you share with us just why that's so important?
So with early diagnosis, the child's able to access early intervention. And the earlier you can access early intervention, the better, because we know autism impacts on the child's ability to learn. So what we want to do is really try to minimize the impact of autism on that learning ability. And if we can get in there early, we can really impact on the child's increase in cognition. So we see with very early identification and intervention, we can alter the developmental pathways of the child. We can move that child and have that child increase their IQ over time. So children who are identified early and diagnosed early do much better by school age. You know, their IQs are much more within the normal range than if they hadn't been able to access very early intervention.
And can you talk a little bit more about just how that works?
Well, the brain, the younger the child is, the more malleable his or her brain is. So, and the brain is also what we call an experience expectant system, in that it grows and develops according to the input it receives. So the younger we get in, the more malleable the brain. What we can have happen is that the early intervention that can really then guide that brain towards more typical development. And that's really what we're trying to, to we're trying to bring down the age of diagnosis, move the child along that developmental trajectory by being identified earlier. And this is really the way you can not only impact on the child's own life, but also the life of the parents. So you increase the quality of life of that whole family.
Okay.
So this is why really early identification is critical.
Right. It sounds so simple, but I guess it's a complex issue. And I know, Josephine, you've identified a number of barriers to early identification in your research. What are some of those barriers that you've identified?
Yeah, so there are actually three main barriers to the early detection of autism. So firstly, the education of healthcare professionals about the early signs of autism has traditionally lagged behind the research. So prior to 2013, the criteria that healthcare professionals used to diagnose autism were not actually relevant for children aged under 2 years. But the current criteria actually incorporate the very early indicators of autism, which we've actually known for over 20 years. The second barrier to early identification is that parents, particularly first-time parents, are unaware of the importance of social and communication behaviours. They don't realise that just like walking and just like talking, development of these really specific early social communication behaviours are actually really critical for healthy brain development. And the last barrier that I've identified is that until now, there's actually been no screening tool that's been effective enough to be recommended to be used universally.
Okay. And Josie, in the video, you talk a lot about the research that you really spearheaded. Can you talk to us a little bit about how your research specifically addresses these challenges?
Yeah, so I touched on in the video that over the last 10 years, I've led 2 large-scale developmental surveillance studies called the Social Attention and Communication Study. And this is where I've trained over 300 maternal and child health nurses to monitor these very early indicators in over 38,000 children. Now, of these children, 1.5% were identified as at risk for autism, which approximates the prevalence of autism. And of those children, 81% went on to have a diagnosis of autism. So this is over 7 times more accurate than the next best tool for early detection of autism, making this method the most effective method for the early detection of autism in the world.
Wow, that's staggering. Josie, let's talk a little bit about the app, which is featured in the video, AS Detect. What was some of the thinking that went behind actually developing a mobile app for parents?
Well, these 2 studies that I've led, they were developed and implemented within the Victorian maternal and child health system in Victoria, in Melbourne, Victoria. And this is a free universal service. So this method is potentially limited by the service in which it's working in. So what we wanted to do is we felt that maybe a mobile app would be an effective way to bridge the need for effective early identification and the limitations of service provision. So we've taken this research and we've made it immensely scalable because AS Detect is built on Heroku. And we've also provided context for parents through the use of videos that show children with and without autism. So this has actually created an app that's not only an early detection tool for autism, but it really is also a parental education tool about these early social communication milestones, because that's the key, isn't it? Education is really the key to understanding behaviour and development and to be able to create change in these children's lives.
Absolutely. And I understand that the role that Salesforce played here was more than just providing the technology platform to build the app. Do you want to talk a little bit about how we work together? Absolutely.
Well, firstly, we really want to thank you, Dan, and your vision, because it is the reason that we're here is because of you. So thank you so much that we're at Dreamforce 2016.
No need to thank. It's been a great collaboration.
Yeah, thank you. And through Dan and with Salesforce's help, through their philanthropic 111 model, we've been able to access an expert team from Salesforce who actually volunteered their time to help us build AS Detect and bring it to market in less than 12 months. So their expertise was absolutely critical. There is no way that we, as OTARC, as a not-for-profit centre, could have achieved this result without Salesforce. So we really do thank them for that.
Fantastic, and it's been an incredible collaboration. I know that the team from Salesforce that worked with OTARC have enjoyed and just enjoyed giving back, so it's been a great partnership. So Josie, let's talk a little bit about the impact the app has had. Right up until now, we've really launched the app in Australia. What's the results been in Australia?
So AS Detect has already had a real impact in Australia. Since its launch in February of this year, we've already had over 10,000 installations, 6,500 parent registrations, and over 4,500 child assessments. So that's really quite extraordinary in such a short period of time. And we've already won Research and Development Project of the Year at both our state and national eye awards. And this was from a field of over 600 entrants. And it's here in America that we're now launching AS Detect in America at Dreamforce 2016, thanks to Salesforce. So we're absolutely thrilled to be here today.
And it's incredible when you think about those numbers. Australia is a relatively small country compared to the United States, but to know that this app has touched 4,500 children's lives in such a dramatic way is just incredible. Josie, let's have a look at the app if you don't mind. I understand you've got your iPad and able to take us through. Why don't you just give us a sense, if you don't mind, for how a parent might use the app?
Sure. Firstly, I should mention that the app is free and it's available on both Apple and Android platforms. So if you have a look here on the bottom right-hand corner, we've got the AS Detect icon here, and we've called it Ask because what we feel is that we feel it's really important to empower parents to be able to ask the questions rather than to be left wondering what if. So if we click on that icon there, you can see here that there is a My Assessments page. So once a parent has registered their child and has added their name and date of birth, the app automatically chooses the relevant assessment for that child, so based on their age. So you can see here that there are 3 assessments, 12, 18 and 24 months. If it's highlighted, it means that that assessment is the most relevant for that child. And if it's greyed out, that child is not eligible for that assessment just yet. So if we go on down to Carlo here at 18 months of age and we click on that, I've already gone through and answered each of the questions. There are 14 questions at the 18-month assessment, and it takes around about 15 to 20 minutes to complete the whole assessment. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you an example video from the app. So we're just going to go down here to Follows Point. We'll click on through there and I'll play that. Follow another person's finger point by 12 months of age. They do this by looking towards what the person is pointing at, as opposed to the person's hand or arm. In the you'll who the adult is pointing after many attempts. See how it's very difficult for the adult child to look at her. The child does not follow the adult's points across the room, even after many.
Good. Wow, look at that. Look at that. Wow, look at that.
In the second video, you'll see children who immediately look to where the adult is pointing and on multiple occasions. See how he immediately follows her point and makes an elephant sound.
Over there. George.
He does the same again, looking across the room.
Liar.
This child follows the adult's point to a pig and then looks back at her.
What's the piggy doing? Oink, oink. There's a piggy.
And this child is pointing to anything in particular. She shares her confused expression with the adult. So you can see there that these videos very clearly differentiate children with and without autism. Apologies for the little bit of lag there, but you get the picture there that the difference between these children with and without autism is quite dramatic. If we can just go back to the app on the screen again, I'm going to show you what happens when we click mostly or rarely. So once a parent watches that video, they then answer the question. So it really provides context for these parents. And if they're not sure, we then provide them with an activity underneath that question. And they then click either mostly, that child engages in that behaviour, or rarely, that child engages in that behaviour. And the reason why we have mostly and rarely as opposed to yes and no is because behaviour is very rarely either entirely absent or present. So we really wanted to provide context for parents and give it a real world, situation. The reason why past screening tools were not working is because they were paper-based questionnaires with no context and were also yes or no questions. So I'm going to go ahead and click that this child rarely engages in this behaviour. And then you come to this review screen. So a parent can go through each of these items and look at them and say, okay, yes, I'm happy with that question. Actually, no, I'd like to change that question. So you can click on through and change this question from rarely to mostly. So once a parent is happy with their response, they then click view results, and instantaneously that parent gets the result for their child's assessment. So in this situation, Carlo has a high likelihood of autism or another related developmental condition, because we know that the other 19% of children who flag on this tool have another related developmental condition who will also benefit from early detection and intervention. So we provide parents with their next steps. We stress that this isn't a diagnosis, that it is about empowering parents to take this information to their doctor. They get a personalised email and they can then have that discussion with their doctor. So it really is about empowering parents. So that's the app there, and there's also a video that we'd like to show as well.
Great. Can we play the video, please?
My name is Heidi, and I'm 11 years old. Once upon a time, I went on a sleepover, which was kind of big, because when I was 2, I found out that I had autism. But we worked hard, so I can do stuff like sleepovers. My first sleepover seemed like it would never come. But here I am. It took a lot of practice to get used to my sleeping bag, to get used to how it felt. We checked if I had everything I needed, like a million times. My favorite pillow, my headphones if it got too loud. I like it when I get to be just like other kids. Because I am just like other kids. And I have friends. And they have houses. And sometimes I sleep there. My name is Heidi. And I'm 11 years old. And I go on sleepovers all the time.
So Josie, that's a really touching video. Do you mind just sharing with the audience who Heidi is and how you came across Heidi?
Yeah, so Heidi was part of my first study in 2008, and I diagnosed Heidi with autism at 2 years of age. And every time I see that video, it does get me quite emotional because I was so pleased to be part of Heidi's journey and the journey of children just like Heidi as well. And this is where AS Detect can actually provide a platform for millions of children with autism around the world being able to benefit from early detection of autism just like Heidi has. So our next steps are to translate the content of AS Detect, not only translating it linguistically, but also culturally and socially, and that is absolutely critical. But the impact that we can have really depends on the funding that we have, and that's where you can all help us. Today we're absolutely thrilled to announce that we're one of 10 finalists for the 2016 Google Impact Challenge. And if we win, we will have enough funds to translate AS Detect into 5 major languages. So you can help us by please voting for us. Please take out your phones, go to the link on the screen, share it on social media and encourage your friends to vote for us as well, because together we can take AS Detect and the early detection and diagnosis of autism to the world.
Great. Well, congratulations on yet another award, Josie. That's so exciting. Cheryl, any closing comments from you?
Yes, well, just to say, our centre was established on the basis of a generous act. So we plead for your generosity in voting for this app so we can really impact 73 million children worldwide who aren't English speakers. So please vote for us and get your friends to as well.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure to be part of this journey with you both. It's great to see you here at Dreamforce. Thank you for making the trip. And it's been an honour to be able to sit here and talk to you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.